Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe, and in today's video, unfortunately, I'm doing it again. I'm dipping my toes back into the cesspool of politics. Not only one, because you all appreciated it and asked for more of that style of content, but then also, what I had touched on in my last video has developed even a little bit more, and there are some moving factors around that. If you haven't watched that video, go watch that. That'll add some clarity to this one. But I will talk a little bit more about what I'm doing today after we go ahead and roll the intro. Alright, so in recent news, according to my limited political understanding, again, I despise politics. I try to avoid it with every fiber of my being, unless it's emergent or unless people want me to get involved. So here I am getting involved. From my understanding, there is a chairperson of the Federal Reserve named Jerome Powell, and he has, from my understanding, not been doing an amazing job at certain aspects of his job, according at least to what I've seen scattered about and from political parties. Now, I always approach all political scenarios with a heavy amount of cynicism because I have found in my experience that no matter which party you're a part of, the people that are leading that party oftentimes have some form of ulterior motive for their messaging, or they don't actually fully personally back it. They're just doing so for the sake of running for office because it all boils down to money, power, control, what have you. But the scenario today is that Trump is upset at Powell for mishandling his position, and I feel that this entire scenario that has suddenly popped up here is in regards again to the broader issue that's at hand right now that the public is more interested in, and that's in regards to the Epstein files and the release or the declassification and also the calling of them not being real and all of this. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. But conveniently around that, suddenly there's this other thing that comes up that Trump wants everybody to focus on instead of Epstein. So to me, again, I'm skeptical about that. I have some questions around that. So today we're going to be looking at some footage centered around both the Powell situation, and then within the same very interview, we're also going to see a little bit of some addressing of the Epstein situation, and we'll talk about the nonverbals and everything that's going on around that as we go through. I think that's enough of the backstory. Let's start into the footage.
Do you have plans, or if you're back considering firing Jerome Powell? What's your justification if you're thinking about this to do this?
He's always been too late, hence his nickname, Too Late. He should have cut interest rates a long time ago. Europe has cut them 10 times in a short period of time, and we cut them none. The only time he cut them was just before the election to try and help Kamala or Biden, whoever the hell it was, because nobody really knew. Obviously, that didn't work, but he tried to cut them for the Democrats.
Listening to Trump speak is like watching somebody try to herd chickens down a path. It's like he's going down the line and then just like a chicken hauls off into the bushes and you have to watch the guy come and collect it back. It's borderline comedic to watch if it weren't for the severity and the weight behind what's being dealt with here. Like, these are financial issues that deal with the entirety of the nation. You're not really hoping for comedic value within that. That's neither here nor there. That's just me making note of the fact that he tangents like a crazy person. But let's continue.
The Democrats, Kamala, and how did that work out? You'll tell me. It didn't work out too well, did it? But he's I think he does a terrible job. He's costing us a lot of money, and we fight.
So during that time, he does an eyebrow raise, which is to add emphasis. He does a mouth shrug, which is similar to a full shoulder shrug, which is an indicator of insincerity or insecurity. It can also be used for possible emphasis in certain scenarios. And then you also see him do a lopsided shrug in there, which the lopsided shrug and the mouth shrug combined, that really pushes me towards either insecurity or insincerity. His nonverbal communication is adding a little bit of muddiness in and around that. It's just adding some questions, which those questions will come to further fruition as this video goes on. You'll see.
And we fight through it. It's almost, the country's become so successful that it doesn't have a big impact, but it does hurt people wanting to get a mortgage. People want to buy a house. He's a terrible Fed chair. I was surprised he was appointed. I'd be surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in and extended him. But they did. So, no, we're not planning on doing anything. We're very concerned.
Okay, so then there's that little blip there where he starts to then shift the responsibility of appointing this Powell individual as chair to the Biden administration. During that time, as he starts to do so, you again see some of the shrugging that I had mentioned before, but then you also hear his cadence start to fall off just a hair as well. He was talking fairly fluidly throughout that, and then once it got around to this Biden administration side of things, he starts to have some more halts and pauses in between his verbiage. To me, all that indicates is that he's processing a little bit more psychologically. The question for that, though, is why? Why are you now processing a little bit more psychologically? Then it gets around to after he says the Biden administration is at fault here, and then he looks down to the side pretty substantially. It's a breaking from his baseline elsewhere. He has been looking around down to the sides, whatnot, as he's recollecting things or trying to present a cohesive statement. But this point is different. It's much more prolonged, and there is a much more substantial verbal cadence change in there as well. He's trying to gain some space and time around that, and that spike from his baseline is extremely fascinating to me. Why does that exist there? If we saw some smaller low-lying spikes come before this little statement about the Biden administration, and then afterwards he has such a massive negative spike from his baseline, why? Why does that all exist around there? Now, there are two main theories that are going around on the internet for this. Is either Trump is being overtly deceitful and trying to rewrite history, or he can't remember, and so he's just presenting what is, as we can soon see, unverified nonsense to the general nation as fact. For me, I'm left asking, well, what about the body language? What does that say? And the nonverbal communication of uncertainty and the negative spike centered around the Biden administration pushes me towards him at least psychologically being aware that something's off with what he's saying. It doesn't mean that he's overtly lying. And it does mean, however, that he has a psychological hiccup with what he just delivered verbally. Otherwise, that breaking of his pattern would not exist that way. Now, in the breaking of eye contact down into the side, this could be a low-lying indicator of shame or guilt. And if it's shame or guilt, that pattern of breaking eye contact down into the side like that, oftentimes you'll also see a brow manipulator. He does not do any brow manipulators, facial manipulators. He actually keeps his hands fairly stationary the entirety of the interview footage that I have here. But if that rest of that cluster with the breaking down into the side is an indicator of shame and guilt, I don't think that he would have shame and guilt centered around maybe having a faulty memory. It would be more so centered around the fact that he just delivered an overt lie. So if I'm going off of just the nonverbal communication, I'm pushed more towards he's being deceitful here intentionally. There is the possibility that he can't remember, which is also concerning. I don't want a leader who is lying through their teeth all the time, and I also don't want a leader who cannot remember what he himself has done. Both of those are problematic. At least one is a little bit less of an intentionally harmful behavior. It's just maybe an absent-minded misstatement or something along those lines. Regardless, now let's watch this clip from a bit ago with Trump and Powell, and then think about it in context with what he just said. And then we'll watch a little clip after this clip back in this interview that we're in, and yeah, we'll see.
We need strong, sound, and steady leadership at the United States Federal Reserve. I have nominated Jay to be our next federal chairman, and so important because he will provide exactly that type of leadership. I think he does a terrible job. He's costing us a lot of money. He's a terrible Fed chair. I was surprised he was appointed. I'd be surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in.
Well, okay, so, I mean, you tell me how that comes across. Even with all of that in consideration, I still think that this is, in part, a diversion from the broader issue of the Epstein files and the Epstein list, which, again, if you haven't gone and watched that first video, that will give you all of the context for why I'm even just bothering with this video here. But if Trump is trying to divert attention from the Epstein files or the Epstein list or anything along those lines, then this would be an excellent way to do so. But even in his diversion, he's either being compromised in memory or compromised in truthfulness. Regardless, now we're going to get around to the root of the issue, in my opinion, and not the diversion that we just watched.
Will you ask Attorney General Pam Bondi to release more documents to finally put this controversy to bed?
You know, whatever's credible, she can release. If a document is credible, if a document's there that is credible, she can release. I think it's good. But it's just a subject. He's dead. He's gone, and all it is certain Republicans got duped by the Democrats, and they're following a Democrat playbook. Well, I don't know. I can't.
The question, will they release any of these? And his immediate response is she can release them. You'll see later on in this interview that she can release them, judging off of whether or not she deems them as worthy of being released or credible for being released. And we saw in the prior video that Bondi relies heavily on what Trump says for what is deemable as worthy to be released. So in other words, we're going to see more or less Trump in a roundabout way saying that he's the one in control of being able to release these files. But that's a roundabout way of doing this. As he's talking about that, we do see some more of those little lopsided shoulder shrugs, and they're possibly pushing in some insecurity and insincerity. And then he also does this fascinating thing to where he relates even some of his follower base to following the ever so stupid Democrat following base, and they've been duped, and how dare they? And so he's attacking not only the credibility of the opposing party, which is low-hanging fruit, very easy to do, he's also now attacking the credibility of party members of his own that are questioning him, which that defensiveness and aggression to me is another massive red flag. He's had plenty of them in the other video. He's now having more of them here. And so there's just continual repeated red flags centered around these Epstein files, the Epstein list, what Epstein may have known about a slew of different people. To me, these patterns are too convenient as well. Everything around this is too convenient for people who are in power. But I've talked about that before. Let's continue on through this. He's about to start talking about Bondi.
No, I can't speak about him, but I can say that Pam Bondi, I really think that she's done very good. She says, I gave you all the credible information. And if she finds any more
So now what he's starting to do is you see him closing in more and more and more. He was relaxed in his normal way, and now his shoulders are coming up and he's becoming more tense. And it's all centered around this Bondi side of things. And then he says that she's doing very good. And right as he's saying that she's doing very good, he does a mouth shrug in there as well, which again, I touched on that. The mouth shrug is similar to the shoulder shrug in that it indicates insecurity and insincerity. So he's not feeling really secure around that, as indicated by now 2 points of nonverbal communication. He might have a little bit more contention with what Bondi has been doing than what is being said here, or there's some other psychological reasoning behind that that's causing this defensiveness and insecurity or insincerity to start cropping up in relation to Pam Bondi. Which again, as we saw in the prior video, Pam Bondi seems to be saying what Trump wants her to say. So there's also that power dynamic that's in there as well. Let's continue.
any more credible information, she'll give that too. What more can she do than that? I mean, honestly, what more can she do? And we do have bigger problems. You know, we have problems with millions of illegal people that came in here, and they're killers and murderers. We have 11,888 murderers that were allowed into our country by Biden, sleepy Joe Biden, stupid Joe Biden. He allowed them into our country. And you know what? We got to do something about it. She's got a lot of things she's working on. And, you know, it's very sad that somebody can be waylaid, that just get waylaid. But I think she's doing a great job, Chris.
Okay, and so during that time, we hear another point of manipulation, which Trump has done this before. He has tried to divert attention by calling light anything else, which, again, I feel like this situation with Jerome is in that bag of tricks. And now he's referring to other things. He's also being aggressive with his, or hostile, I think would be a better term. He's being hostile with his language around that, calling the people who had done certain things stupid, and we have to pay attention to anything else. Just don't ask questions about this. And then again, while it boils around to Bondi, there's a lot of insecurity, defensiveness, and things like that at play. So I have massive questions. Now we're going to get around to this really fascinating clip, which we'll talk about it after we kind of watch it, because, I mean, wow, you'll see.
Mr. President, your daughter-in-law said that there should be transparency in the Epstein case. Do you agree with her, sir?
The attorney general's handled that very well. She is.
During that time, the Attorney General has handled that very well. You see little micro no shakes in there. They're small. They're very micro. They're not. She's handling it very well. It's not the unbelievable you wouldn't believe, it's micro. So for those of you that do not know, and if you haven't been on the channel before, the smaller the movement non-verbally, the less likely it is to be consciously controlled. If it's a very small, brief movement, it's more likely to be a subconscious seepage of the genuine emotion that's happening behind the scenes. So had there been the very large nose shake in there while saying this, I would have related it to the unbelievable nature, or you wouldn't believe something along those lines. It's micro, so I see that as a desynchronization point. He's saying she did really well, which would have an affirmative head nod. She did a thing. Instead, he says, she did really well. Little no shakes in there. She did really well. And to me, that desynchronization point, the nonverbal, is a little bit more telling than the verbal side of things. And also, I've just seen on repeat now that I can't trust anything that he says. So I'm immediately always going to be more skeptical and have more cynicism towards him. Let's continue watching.
She's really done a very good job. And I think that when you look at it, you'll understand that. I would like to see that also. But I think the Attorney General, the credibility is very important. And you want credible evidence for something like that. And I think the Attorney General's handled it very well. She's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, you know, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through.
Okay, so now he's saying that the Epstein files were totally made up by Obama, by Biden, by whoever else, which again, the likelihood of that is next to zero. Maybe somehow, some way they did something to get that to happen there. Possibly, but we're starting to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to make what he's saying actually fit reality. Have a lot of questions on that. And then after that, his tone and the force behind his words greatly increase as he's becoming a little bit more aggressive. So perhaps this is a compensation for what he just said there. And then to add to that as well, we see his overt palms forward defensive displays that we have seen before. I've mentioned that before. He does this fairly regularly in a lot of his speaking areas, but I also don't know that that's not because he's oftentimes saying things that might warrant a level of defensiveness, as even seen in this very video here. But we've seen two weird points of manipulation and defensiveness even in this little area, and then in the context of everything else, it starts to become much more highlighted. Let's finish this up.
Different things that we had to go through, we've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well, and it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release.
Okay, and there's the kicker there. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. And whatever she thinks is credible is what Donald Trump thinks is credible. As again, we saw that power play kind of play out a little bit in the other video. And so realistically speaking, it does seem as though whatever Trump thinks is credible, she should release. So we have a lot to consider here. Throughout the first side of things, we have overt either deceit or loss of memory, and both of those are problematic. And then I have more of a feeling that it's more deceitful as indicated by the nonverbal communication around those instances of deceit. And then on the other half of this, we have some of the exact same diversion and manipulation tactics that were used before and have been used again and again and again in many other interviews and things like that. But it's those defensive and manipulative tactics that are being used that raise red flags to me. There are things that could be done, but it's treated as if it's either a black and white all or nothing scenario. And we're seeing so many manipulation tactics around it that it's only raising more red flags. Had this just been addressed cleanly, all of this probably would have gone away pretty darn quickly. But instead, it's been pushed against, and it's been fought against, and it's been manipulated around, and it's been so defensive and aggressive around it. To me, it feels like we've hit a nerve. So as the general public, I don't think that we should back off. I don't think we should lay off on our pressure that we're putting on this, because it feels like there might be some cracks starting to show. But let me know what your thoughts are of this entire situation in the comments of this video. Have I missed something? I'm sure I've missed something. Again, politics is not my realm. Nonverbal communication, that's what I like to do. So I'm sure I've missed some sort of contextual something. So if I have, fill me in the comments of this video. I think a lot of people are feeling pretty unclear as to what they should or shouldn't be feeling in this area. And so hopefully videos like these can help add some clarity. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.